My name is Sara James, I'm 31 years old, and the first car I ever owned wasn't stolen or totaled. It was sold by my own parents while I was still at work, and when I walked into the driveway that evening my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You'll earn another one." He won't. I wish I could tell you that was the worst part, but it wasn't. The worst part was discovering 6 years later that my car had never actually saved my brother at all. By the time I learned the truth, I was sitting in a courtroom in Nashville, Tennessee, holding a folder my mother prayed I would never open, and that was the day my family realized they hadn't raised the daughter they thought they could keep sacrificing. If you've ever been called the responsible one only because everyone expected you to survive everything, this story will probably hit closer than you think. I grew up in Franklin, Tennessee, where everyone on our street thought we were the perfect family. My parents, David and Monica James, smiled at church every Sunday. My younger brother Tyler was the golden child, the funny one, the charming one, the one everyone believed would do something big someday. I was simply the dependable daughter, the one teachers praised because I never caused trouble and neighbors admired because I always worked after school. By 16, I had 2 part-time jobs and saved every dollar I could, dreaming about buying my own car before graduation. When I finally parked my used silver Honda Civic in our driveway at 18, I remember staring at it through my bedroom window, thinking it was the first thing in my life that truly belonged to me. I had no idea that inside my parents' house ownership meant nothing whenever Tyler needed rescuing. And looking back now, I realize that little Honda wasn't the only thing they planned to take from me. It was just the beginning. The summer after graduation felt like the first season of my life that actually belonged to me. I was working full-time at a local pharmacy while preparing for nursing school. Every paycheck went into a small notebook where I tracked every dollar for tuition, insurance, and rent. I wasn't waiting for anyone to build my future because experience had already taught me that if I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. Tyler lived by a completely different set of rules. He was 19, had already dropped out of community college twice, and somehow every mistake he made turned into another emergency. My parents expected the family to solve. 1 month it was unpaid credit cards, the next it was a broken motorcycle, then suddenly it became something much bigger. My parents told everyone Tyler had gotten involved with the wrong people and desperately needed money to keep his life from falling apart. They spoke in half sentences and worried whispers, making it sound like every hour mattered. One Thursday afternoon, I finished my shift and walked outside expecting to see my Honda waiting in its usual parking spot. Instead, my father was standing there beside an empty space holding my spare key in his hand. I remember laughing because I honestly thought someone had stolen it. He looked at me without blinking and quietly said, "We sold it this morning. Tyler needed help more than you needed a car. You'll earn another one." He won't. For a few seconds, I couldn't even understand the words. They had sold the car I had worked 2 years to buy without asking my permission, without calling me, and without giving me a single chance to stop them. My mother stepped forward trying to sound comforting, saying families make sacrifices, and that one day I would understand. I asked where the money had gone. My father answered, "Every cent saved your brother." That night I packed a small duffel bag and slept on the couch at my coworker Emily Carter's apartment. I kept waiting for my phone to ring, expecting one of my parents to apologize or tell me there had been some terrible misunderstanding, but morning came in complete silence. Looking back now, I realize the silence wasn't an accident. It was the first payment they expected me to make for loving my family, and I had no idea how expensive that bill would become. 6 years passed faster than I ever expected and slower than I ever wanted. I finished nursing school in Knoxville, earned my right now license on my first attempt, and built a life that no longer depended on anyone in my family. I rented a small townhouse, worked long hospital shifts, and slowly replaced everything I'd lost. The car was easy to replace, trust was not. During those years my parents barely called unless they needed advice about insurance paperwork, medical questions, or someone to help Tyler clean up another disaster. Somehow I was always good enough to solve problems, but never important enough to matter. Then one rainy Monday evening my mother called, crying harder than I'd ever heard before. Tyler had been arrested after a financial fraud investigation involving the construction company where he worked. She begged me to come home because the family was falling apart. Against my better judgment, I drove back to Franklin, convinced someone had finally learned from the past. Instead, I walked into another performance. My parents weren't looking for forgiveness, they were looking for another rescue. They wanted me to refinance my townhouse and help pay Tyler's legal fees. My father called it a temporary sacrifice. My mother promised everyone would pay me back once Tyler got back on his feet. I almost laughed because I'd heard those exact words before, only this time I asked a question I had never asked 6 years earlier. "Can I see The paperwork from the time you sold my car." The room went completely silent. My father looked at my mother looked at Tyler, and Tyler suddenly found the floor more interesting than my face. That silence told me more than any answer ever could. A week later, curiosity pushed me into the county records office, where an old bill of sale had been archived with the vehicle transfer documents. I wasn't expecting much, maybe just confirmation that the money had gone toward Tyler's emergency, like they always claimed. Instead, I found something that made my hands shake. The buyer had paid $14,800. Attached to the sale was a cashier's check made payable directly to my father. 2 days later, another public filing showed the exact same amount had been used as the down payment on a lake cabin outside Center Hill Lake, not a hospital, not a lawyer, not debt collectors, a vacation property. The story I'd carried for 6 years collapsed in less than 5 minutes. My car had never saved Tyler, it had financed my parents' dream, and Tyler knew it. The entire time that night I drove to the lake cabin and sat alone in my car staring at the porch lights reflecting across the water. Then I opened my laptop and called an attorney in Nashville, because for the first time in my life I wasn't interested in another family explanation. I wanted the truth on the record. The attorney's name was Rebecca Holloway. She listened without interrupting while I laid every document across her conference table: the bill of sale, the cashier's check, the property records. Every page told the same story. My parents hadn't sold my car to save Tyler, they had sold it because they wanted something they couldn't afford themselves. Rebecca looked up and asked one simple question: "Did you ever authorize the sale?" "No." "Did they ever transfer ownership into their names?" "No." She nodded once and said something I never expected to hear: "Then this isn't just about betrayal, Sarah, this may be fraud." For a moment I couldn't breathe. I had spent 6 years believing I had been selfish for feeling angry. Meanwhile, the people who kept preaching family had built their dream with something that never belonged to them. 2 weeks later, formal legal notices arrived at my parents' house. That was the first time they remembered my phone number. My mother cried, saying I was destroying the family. My father insisted lawyers only make everything worse. Tyler called me 3 different times saying I needed to let the past stay buried because everyone had already moved on. I answered him with the only sentence that mattered: "I didn't bring the past back. You did when you lied about it." The mediation meeting was scheduled in Nashville 1 month later. Walking into that room felt strangely familiar. My parents sat together. On one side I sat alone, on the other just like when I was 18, only this time I wasn't the frightened girl who thought keeping the peace was worth losing herself. Rebecca calmly placed every document on the table in chronological order. Then she asked my father one question: "Can you provide any proof that the proceeds from Sarah's vehicle were used for Tyler's emergency?" Silence. My mother reached for his hand. Tyler stared at the ceiling. Finally my father admitted the truth: there never had been an emergency. Tyler had gotten into minor debt, but it wasn't life-threatening. The lake cabin had been their dream for years. They believed I was responsible enough to recover from losing my car. His exact words were, "You always landed on your feet." We thought she'd understand eventually. That sentence hurt more than the sale itself, not because of what he admitted, but because it proved they had never seen me as their daughter, only as the family safety net. The mediation ended with a written settlement. My parents agreed to repay the full value of the vehicle with accumulated interest and legal costs. They also signed a statement acknowledging that I had never consented to the sale. People ask if the money healed everything. It didn't. Money replaces a car, it doesn't replace trust. A year later, I used that settlement to make the down payment on my own home outside Nashville. The first thing I parked in its garage was another silver Honda Civic, not because it was expensive, but because it reminded me of the girl who believed hard work could build freedom. She was right, just not in the house where she grew up. Today, I'm 31. My parents still send birthday cards. Tyler still avoids talking about that meeting, and every time someone tells me a family comes first, I smile politely, because now I know something they spent years trying to teach me the wrong way. Real family never asks one child to keep paying the price for another. Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do isn't making another sacrifice. It's refusing to become someone else's emergency fund ever again.